The late afternoon sun poured through the tall windows of my office in downtown Austin, casting long shadows across the sleek conference table. I was 32, running a growing AI ethics consultancy that helped companies navigate the moral minefield of artificial intelligence. Most days felt like quiet victories earned through years of lonely work. My assistant Rachel knocked softly on the open door, her face unusually tense. "Elena," she said carefully, "there are 3 people in the lobby asking for you. They say they're your family." I looked up from my screen, the word family landing strangely after 4 years of absolute silence. No calls, no birthdays, no messages, just emptiness. "Who exactly?" I asked. "Your parents and your older brother." For a moment the air in the room felt thinner. I set my pen down slowly. "Show them to the main conference room. I'll be there shortly." Rachel nodded and left. I sat still for a few breaths, letting the news settle. Then I stood, smoothed my dark blouse, and walked down the hallway lined with glass-walled offices where my team worked in focused quiet. No one knew the storm that had just entered our building. I paused outside the conference room, hand resting on the cool glass. Through it I could see them. My father scanning the space with appraising eyes, my mother sitting with perfect posture, and my brother Marcus leaning back in his chair like he already belonged at the head of any table. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. My father noticed me first. "Nice setup, Elena." Bigger than I expected. My mother offered a small, practiced smile. "Hello, darling." Marcus didn't bother with pleasantries. He crossed his arms and grinned. Not bad for someone who was supposed to be the family disappointment. I stayed near the door, keeping distance like armor. "You shouldn't be here." My father waved a hand dismissively. "We didn't drive all the way from Houston to stand in hallways." "Sit down." I remained standing. "What do you want?" My mother sighed, as if I were being difficult. "Is that how you greet us after 4 years?" "You disappeared from my life for 4 years." I replied evenly. "You don't get to act surprised by my tone." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Can we skip the drama? We're here for business." The word business tightened something low in my stomach. My father reached into a leather folder and slid a thick stack of papers across the glossy table. "Read it," he said. I didn't touch the documents. "What is it?" My mother answered, her voice smooth. "A partnership agreement." "With whom?" Marcus leaned forward, smile widening. "With me. My startup combines with your company. Perfect synergy." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You walk into my office uninvited after 4 years of silence and ask for half of everything I built." "Not ask," Marcus said, tone sharpening. "We're offering you a chance to do the right thing for the family." My mother pushed the papers closer until they stopped right in front of me. Her eyes hardened. "Sign them. 50% ownership to Marcus." I stared at her. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. My father added calmly, "Marcus's company needs stability right now. Linking it to yours will reassure investors. You've built something impressive here, but businesses run on trust and connections." I slowly picked up the papers, scanning the first page. It was exactly what they claimed, a transfer of half my company to my brother. "You think I'm simply going to hand over 50% of my life's work?" I asked quietly. Marcus shrugged. "You wouldn't have any of this without the family name behind you anyway." I looked at the 3 of them, the people who had once erased me so cleanly it felt like I had never existed. 4 years of silence, and now they wanted to own what I had created in that emptiness. For a moment, I said nothing. Then I did the one thing they clearly did not expect. I smiled. "All right," I said softly. "Let's talk about the partnership." My mother blinked. Marcus's smirk grew wider. None of them noticed that my smile wasn't surrender. It was preparation. The rest of the afternoon passed in a careful rhythm. I answered emails, reviewed client proposals, and spoke with my lead developer about a new compliance framework as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside, for years of buried memory had begun to stir. I remembered the night everything fractured. We had been working on the first version of the AI ethics platform in a small shared office in Houston. I wrote every line of the core algorithm that could scan systems and flag ethical risks before deployment. Marcus handled investor meetings and branding. At first it felt like collaboration. Then the praise started shifting. I walked into a pitch meeting early one evening and heard him tell potential backers, "The entire concept came from me. My sister helped with some of the technical pieces, but the vision is mine." I stood in the doorway, invisible, while they nodded and asked him questions about his breakthrough. Later in the hallway, I confronted him. "Why did you say that?" He shrugged, not even bothering to look guilty. "Investors like a single clear founder. It sounds cleaner." "That's not true, Marcus. I built the system." "Relax, Elena. Everyone exaggerates a little. It doesn't change the fact that we're in this together." But it did change things. The story grew. Soon he introduced himself as the creator. Our parents began repeating the narrative at family dinners, praising Marcus's visionary mind, while patting my shoulder and saying I was good with computers. The breaking point came in my parents' living room. I laid out the code timestamps, the original notebooks, everything. Marcus laughed it off as sibling rivalry. My father sighed and told me I was being unreasonable. My mother looked at me with cool disappointment and said, "Marcus has always understood how the real world works. You should support him instead of competing." That night something inside me went very still. I told them if that was what they believed, then I was done. The next morning I packed my things and left the company we had started together. I expected anger, maybe even a fight. What I got was silence. Complete, deliberate silence. No calls. No messages. No attempts to reconcile. It was as if I had ceased to exist the moment I refused to play the supporting role they had written for me. For the first year, I worked freelance gigs from a tiny apartment, surviving on instant noodles and sheer stubbornness. Long nights debugging code under a single desk lamp. Slowly the new system took shape. Cleaner, more robust, focused on ethics rather than shortcuts. Clients noticed. Word spread. The company I run today grew from those quiet, lonely hours. And now the same people who erased me wanted half of it. I finished my last call of the day and leaned back in my chair. Through the glass walls, I could see the evening cleaning crew moving between desks. My family had left earlier, confident and smiling, believing I had folded. They had no idea I had spent the last 4 years preparing for a moment exactly like this. I opened a secure folder on my laptop that I had not touched in months. Inside were financial records, old investor complaints, time-stamped code comparisons, and quiet conversations I had documented after the split. Marcus's previous 2 startups had collapsed under similar patterns, promising ideas, enthusiastic funding rounds, then sudden departures of key people and money moved to offshore accounts. I had watched from a distance, never intervening, simply collecting. Rachel knocked again. "The meeting room is booked for 7:30. Investors and senior team confirmed. Your family said they'll be back." I nodded. "Thank you. Make sure the auditors are on standby." She hesitated. "Everything okay, Elena?" I offered her a small, genuine smile. "It will be." After she left, I stood at the window and looked out over the Austin skyline. The city lights were beginning to flicker on. For years ago, they had thrown me away because I would not let them rewrite my story. The conference hall filled slowly as evening settled over Austin. Soft overhead lighting reflected off the long walnut table while my senior team, key investors, and legal counsel took their seats. Low conversations hummed until I walked in. Then the room quieted with the kind of respect that comes from years of earned trust. My family had arrived early. My father stood near the windows, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the space like a general assessing territory. My mother sat with perfect posture, whispering something to Marcus, who leaned against the table laughing easily with one of my investors, as if he already belonged. I took my place at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. Tonight we're discussing a proposed partnership that could significantly shape the future of this company." My father immediately leaned forward. "Yes, a partnership that will bring stability and fresh capital. Marcus's startup brings complementary strengths." Marcus opened his folder and slid copies of the agreement down the table. It's straightforward, he said, voice carrying confidence. My company invests experience and resources. In return, I receive 50% ownership. Together we become unstoppable. My mother nodded proudly. It's a generous offer. Any smart leader would see the value. Several investors exchanged glances. One of my longest-standing board members raised an eyebrow but stayed silent, waiting for my response. I picked up the papers, turned a few pages slowly, then set them down again. You're right. It does look generous on the surface. Marcus's smile widened. My father relaxed visibly in his chair. I continued calmly. That's why I wanted this meeting to be completely transparent. Before anyone commits, we should understand exactly who we're partnering with. Marcus laughed lightly. Of course. I welcome full disclosure. My father waved a hand impatiently. Elena, don't drag this out. Just sign the agreement so we can move forward as a family. I shook my head gently. No. First, we need to review the full picture. I turned slightly toward the side door. Rachel, please bring them in. The door opened. Two people entered, a tall man in a charcoal suit carrying a thick binder and a woman with a laptop. The energy in the room shifted immediately. Marcus's smile faltered. Who are they? These are independent financial auditors, I said evenly. I requested a thorough background review once the partnership proposal was presented. My mother looked annoyed. Elena, what kind of stunt is this? We're family. I met her eyes. Exactly. You asked for 50% of my company. That means I have every right to know who I'm really dealing with. The male auditor placed the binder on the table and opened it. We examined Marcus's previous business ventures over the last 6 years. Marcus stood up abruptly. This is unnecessary. The meeting is about moving forward, not digging up old history. The auditor continued, without pause. 3 companies. All launched with significant investor funding. All shut down within 2 years. My mother frowned. That doesn't prove anything. Many startups fail. You're correct, the auditor replied. But moving large sums of investor capital into personal offshore accounts shortly before closure does raise questions. The woman connected her laptop to the large screen on the wall. Bank records appeared, dates, amounts, account numbers. A collective stillness fell over the room. My father leaned forward, voice tighter now. What exactly are we looking at? The auditor pointed to a highlighted transfer. $2.1 million moved from the second company's operating account to an account in the Cayman Islands 3 weeks before it folded. Similar patterns appear in the third venture. Marcus's face had gone pale. These are taken out of context. This meeting is over. He started toward the door, but 2 security guards who had quietly entered behind the auditors stepped forward, blocking the exit. I leaned back in my chair, voice remaining calm and measured. You're not leaving yet, Marcus. Everyone in this room deserves the complete story before any decisions are made. My mother's perfectly composed mask cracked. Elena, this is ridiculous. We came here to help you. No, I said quietly, looking around the table at the faces that had supported me through years of building this company. You came here to take what I built after you threw me away for refusing to let Marcus steal credit for work that was mine. The room stayed silent except for the low hum of the projector. The evidence was only beginning to unfold, and for the first time since they had walked into my lobby that afternoon, my family looked truly unsettled. The projector light cast sharp shadows across the conference table. Every eye in the room was fixed on the screen as the auditor continued his calm, methodical presentation. Marcus stood frozen halfway to the door, the 2 security guards blocking his path with quiet authority. The female auditor clicked to the next slide. These records show repeated patterns. In each of Marcus's previous companies, significant investor funds were redirected shortly before operations collapsed. In one case, the original intellectual property filings were altered after initial registration. I remained seated, hands folded, voice steady. Continue, please. Marcus's face flushed with anger. This is a setup. Elena, you've been planning this all day. I looked at him directly. No, Marcus. I've been protecting what I built for 4 years. Ever since the night you told investors the entire AI ethics platform was your vision. The same platform I designed line by line while you handled meetings. My mother's voice cut in, sharp and defensive. That was years ago. Family disagreements happen. This is about moving forward together. The male auditor opened another document. We also compared code repositories. The core algorithm in Marcus's current startup contains striking similarities to the original proprietary code Elena Harper developed 4 years ago, code that was never transferred or licensed to him. A low murmur rippled through the investors and my team. One of my senior developers leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the highlighted lines on the screen. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Enough. This meeting is over. But the auditor continued, without emotion. 3 formal complaints were filed by former investors in Marcus's prior ventures, all settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. In each case, the complainants alleged misuse of funds and misrepresentation of ownership. My mother stood up, her chair scraping loudly. This is outrageous. Elena, you're humiliating your own brother in front of strangers. I met her eyes without flinching. You humiliated me 4 years ago when you chose his lies over my truth. You cut me out completely because I refused to let him steal credit for my work. I built this company alone, from nothing, while you pretended I didn't exist. The room had gone deathly quiet. Even the investors who had known me for years looked stunned. Marcus's confidence had completely shattered. Sweat beaded on his forehead. You're twisting everything. I came here to help the family. No, I said. You came here because your latest venture is failing and you needed my company as a lifeline. You thought I was still the same person you could manipulate and discard. I nodded to the auditors. The woman brought up one final slide, timestamped emails and code commit logs proving Marcus had accessed and attempted to copy my original system after I left the first company. My father stared at the screen, his face pale. For the first time, he looked truly uncertain. Marcus turned toward the door again, but the security guards held their position. I stood slowly, addressing the entire room. There will be no partnership tonight, or ever. My company remains independent. Any further attempts to interfere will be met with legal action based on the evidence we've documented. Marcus glared at me, voice low and venomous. You'll regret this. I held his gaze. The only thing I regret is believing for so long that blood meant loyalty. The twist had landed. The family that came to take everything now stood exposed in front of the very people whose respect they had tried to leverage. And the night was not yet over. The silence in the conference hall felt heavier than any words could have been. The evidence still glowed on the large screen behind me, dates, transfers, code comparisons that told a story my family could no longer spin. Investors shifted in their seats. My team watched with quiet respect, and my parents and brother stood exposed in the center of the room they had entered so confidently only hours earlier. I remained standing at the head of the table, voice steady but low. This company was built on integrity, the very thing I help our clients protect. I will not compromise that foundation for anyone, not even family. My mother's face had lost its polished calm. Elena, you're making a mistake. We're your blood. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done? I interrupted gently. You erased me for 4 years because I wouldn't let Marcus take credit for work that was mine. You chose his lies over my truth. You taught me that blood doesn't automatically mean loyalty. I learned that lesson well. My father looked older under the bright lights, his shoulders slightly slumped. We can still fix this. Privately. There's no need to drag the family name through this. I shook my head. You dragged it here yourself when you sat in my lobby and demanded ownership. Tonight was your choice, not mine. Marcus stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes despite the security guards nearby. You think you've won? You're still the same difficult sister who couldn't play as part of the team. I met his gaze without flinching. I was never difficult, Marcus. I was honest. And honesty made me inconvenient. But it also made this company what it is today, respected, growing, and built on my own terms. I turned to the room, addressing everyone present. There will be no partnership. My company stays independent. Any future attempts to interfere, through clients, investors, or otherwise, will be met with the full documentation we have gathered. Legal counsel is already prepared. One of my longest-standing investors nodded slowly, a sign of quiet approval. Several team members sat straighter, pride visible in their expressions. My mother's voice rose, edged with desperation. "You'll regret turning your back on us." I offered a small, sad smile. "The only regret I carry is how long I held on to the hope that you might one day see me clearly. I don't need your approval anymore. I never did." I nodded once to the security team. "Please escort them out." Quietly, Marcus started to protest, but the guards moved with calm efficiency. My brother shot me one last glare filled with resentment before they guided him toward the door. My parents followed, my father avoiding my eyes, my mother holding her head high even as her world tilted. As the door closed behind them, the tension in the room slowly released. A few quiet conversations began. Rachel caught my eye from across the table and gave me a subtle nod of support. I sat down again, the weight of 4 years finally lifting from my shoulders. The city lights of Austin sparkled beyond the windows, steady and bright. This company, these people, this life I had built in the silence they left me in, it was mine. Truly mine. Later, after everyone had gone and the hall was empty, I stood alone at the window. The night felt different now. Cleaner. I thought about the young woman who had walked away from that Houston office 4 years ago with nothing but her code and her principles. She had survived. She had grown stronger. I no longer needed to prove anything to the family that had discarded me. I had already proven everything to myself. And that was enough.